I don't normally do dedications, but on this Shabbat, I'm extending my sweet and happiest birthday blessings to a 3-time chair of endowment, 2-time chair of building campaign, and still not done, Mr. Will Sukanik, who's celebrating a 95th birthday this Shabbat. Will, happy birthday. It's not just Will's birthday, it's not just Shabbat, it's not just Unification Shabbat. It's the 6th of Adar. From here to the 14th day of Adar, the clergy, teachers, and teens of 2 Beechwood Bimas will be leading raucous Purim celebrations with their one wild, precious life. There's nothing like Jews at Purim. In these days, I'm often found smack-talking the merits of Purim Hamantashen over Hanukkah latkes. Why? Because Hamantashen are better. Also, because Purim says to us, lighten up. At the outset of Adar, we are commanded to seek levity. Anguish is verboten, despite a Purim narrative featuring a monstrous man throwing a symbolic rope to us with which he intends to hang us all from gallows. It's hard to resist that villain and to not grab our end of the rope that tethers us to Haman, to Hitler, to Hussein, to Hamas, or whomever will be the next brutal foe, demanding that we become denigrated before the world. Especially since October 7th, hostility for Jews is on the rise. Israel is responding with ferocity to back up self-determination, and Jews worldwide, all of us, are coping with the trauma of having seen hostages taken, mutilations, assaults, added to the threats of missiles aimed at Jews, missiles funded by nations who intended their resources to be used to provide aid and medicine to innocent Gazans. Like no Purim in my lifetime, anti-Semites on the right and the left are really yucking the yum out of my Purim. This holiday is supposed to help us all recall that we can escape from harm, but this moment, escape from harm it doesn't seem as plausible as it used to. Megillat Esther itself records anti-Semitic insults spewed by the chief lieutenant to a Persian king by the name of, oh, come on, Haman. And what he says is that there's a certain people scattered among us whose laws differ. These people do not obey the king, and it's not in the king's interest to tolerate them any longer. And the king accepts such aspersions on spec, ignoring that the man offered no details to back up his malevolence for Jews. Why offer evidence when propaganda more effectively stirs up consuming rage? The lieutenant to the king uses his power, grabs it by lying about Jews, and it works. We know it works. Jews at his time were largely assimilated into the majority of Persian culture, invited to exclusive royal celebrations, decadent feasts. They held positions of prominence in Persian commerce. And that's why Mordechai demanded us not to bow in the face of Haman or the king. He knew tempting freedom beckoned Jews. But we know different. We also know that I skipped page 2, and we're looking for it in my notes.
You want Rabbi Klein's page 2?
Hold on.
Do you have a page 2? Rabbi Klein has page 2.
I got it. That's what you get when Augie Napoli's printing it up, right? Thank you, Augie. Appreciate you scooting it around in different order. Mordechai pleaded with fellow Jews to take responsibility we're still taking tonight. To kindle Jewish light and hope, he admitted that whether he liked it or not, a new era had risen. The world had changed. Rather than sit in denial, Mordechai imagined a new light-filled path that could help our heritage to endure. He believed there are historical moments in which our lives are placed to bring about redemption and avert unfair treatment and oppression. I applaud the composers of the Scroll of Esther who believed that Jews were on earth to be redemptive. In its scriptural teaching, we first see signs of how loyalty to one's community can coexist with carrying a proud Jewish heritage. The Torah demonstrates how reflection, imagination, patience, and courage, that's what makes that work. If these values sound familiar, patience, courage, vision, they should. Just last week, two courageous, visionary temple presidents by the name of Beth Derry and Michelle Krantz, who themselves praised this community, but they themselves ought to be praised for patience, vision, and courage. They thanked you for voting in the recent vote to merge, and doing so in overwhelming numbers, expressing your views loud and clear, asking questions. Beth and Michelle and every past president of our individual institutions know how passionate we all are in carrying forward the values of our communities, aspiring to Tifereth, glory, and living with chesed, loving kindness. And while these terms have animated our history, the exploration teams of our two temples, led by extraordinary leaders Julie Raskin and Ken Hochman, they were candid with one another from the beginning. They agreed at the outset, whether we like it or not, a new era has risen. There are challenges and opportunities. Let's knock over the challenges. Let's take the opportunities. And how has the era changed? Think about it. For the longest stretch of time, these two temples were led by singular clergy leaders, towering over the community with influence. But the era changed. It needed different types of leaders. Our communities, each of them long ago, resolved to leave behind iconic singular leaders and enable what has shined brightest over the last 4 decades in each of these synagogues. When temple leaders partner with clergy as catalysts, exploring together the multiple ways that we can be both modern and Jewish. If you look around at others assembled tonight, or if you're praying online and you can look back at the last time you prayed in this chapel or the Bonda Chapel at Fairmount Temple, you are all part of what is best in Jewish Cleveland. At each of our temples, you've learned to face challenges with optimism and creativity. You've learned the power of honest soul searching. You've approached the proposal of founding a new congregation with gravity and respect. You've listened critically to our shared clergy vision of a Mishkan Or, a dwelling place of light. Hold on. But we know that inspirational Hebrew phrases, not even beautiful ones like Mishkan Or, are where congregants begin and end their search for meaning. For many of you, it was at Silver's, or Brickner's, or Lelyveld's temple that you found a Jewish point of origin. You don't have to let that go. Just because you voted ultimately for change doesn't mean you set aside the inspiration you felt at Silver's and Brickner's, be it on Ansel Road, or Shaker Boulevard, Euclid Avenue, or Fairmount. Just walk with us. Walk with us forward. Walk with this incredible team. We are planning to blaze a trail with you that will make history, but not the wrong kind of history. We're going to make history by doing more good and making the world more whole and more just, because this congregation has come together to do so. Tonight, 8 days before Purim, and 8 days after the results of a transformational vote to found Congregation Mishkan Or on July 1, I have an exceptional privilege. Tonight, I'm a guest speaker at Silver's pulpit, but at Sibo's temple. And the Dunes Temple, and Klein's Temple, and Block's Temple. And in a few months, together as partners, we'll base operations here, but we're going to launch initiatives all over this community. In addition to the honored names I've just shared, we'll be gathered here to change the world as part of Mulbaum's Temple, Caruso's Temple, Lapin's Temple, and Sager's Temple. And don't you get me wrong, this temple isn't going to be known by any of these clergy initiative signatures. No, this will be all of our temple. It's going to be Gannon Gill's temple. And it's going to be that temple that features the Maltz Museum and the Performing Arts Center. It will also be the temple that years ago embraced and welcomed as partners the members of the Chevre Tikva LGBT congregation. It will be the community kitchen temple. It will be the community that identifies Dr. King's holiday as sacred, high, and holy as any other Jewish festival. I'm trying to say all of us, each of us, we're going to do the best we can to bring the best of us into this new venture. We are but an inaugural clergy team. You are founding members, all of us, founders of something incredible. But we pledge to strengthen commitments already in place while inventively dedicating new paths of Jewish connection, depth, and meaning. We intend to do so with unprecedented outreach and resources to invest in millennials and Gen Z, whom I regard as the most taken for granted Jewish population in our lifetimes. We intend to train up new leaders and measure our achievements. Our new congregation, the one we found together, can help spiritual practice flourish and Torah be enlivened. But just as Mordechai, we do so knowing that we have a unique role, a unique message to convey. Yeah, you can expect levity every year at Purim, but you'll also take joy when this temple celebrates secular simchas. Congregation Mishkan Or will beam with light the very next time Cleveland players win or chase a pennant, hoist an NBA trophy, or put that Super Bowl ring on the fingers of those Browns. And if it seems to you like I'm dreaming, that's because this boy who cheers for Detroit Dreams is actually living a dream come true. I live with the greatest woman alive. My children are honest and soulful people whom I admire, and I'm alive. Alive. And I get to do work that's valuable to me. And I get to do it now with a clergy team and resources, well, that just set this community apart. Together with this team, we can be a place of courage, inspiration, and vision. Together with you, we can be sure that we don't take Reform Judaism for granted. In fact, we should look to its sources, to the Hebrew prophets, and understand that we do our best work, our very best work, when we use the power of community to make justice roll down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream. In every community I've served, the very best people with whom to immerse in that mighty stream have been interfaith allies. And because of the visionary leadership of Rabbi Joshua Caruso, we know deep allyship in the institutions bound in GCC, the Greater Cleveland congregations that he founded. Because of the work of Rabbi Mobam, we are entering the future of Congregation Mishkan Or, with one of our rabbis having been the key rabbinic voice and force to be reckoned with in Cleveland's incredible Freedom of Choice Coalition and within the invaluable network of the Ohio Religious Action Center, which secured reproductive freedom and a woman's access to abortion in Ohio. Volunteers together engaged in the work of social justice on many initiatives. I am confident we can dream of a world repaired and then take action with allies to repair it. Now, recently, I heard in this chapel Rabbi Dadoun speak at this pulpit in this chapel so compellingly about not shrinking our Judaism when we walk for justice with allies. The room was captivated by her vision because she addressed a very critical challenge on all our minds, and I listened carefully. I listened and got a chance to watch, but online, because I was kind of busy on Rosh Hashanah, when I heard Rabbi Klein's Rosh Hashanah remarks, teaching this community about the dialectic of holding on to tradition, and at the same time engaging in substantive, visionary change, engaging potential partnership in a new temple. In November, I was so moved to join our wonderful cantors, Cantor Laureate Sager and Cantor Lappin, at the community-wide concert benefit in Cleveland that brought emergency care to Israel battered with trauma. We all knew that day that Cleveland was blessed because Cantor Kathy Sebo was a native daughter. She was placed in that moment like Esther, because within her reach is bringing this entire community together and teaching us the lessons that we know whenever it's near Purim. In the shadow of threats and attacks, we sing with vibrancy, joy, and commitment. These people and all of the people, the extraordinary people you've given me the opportunity to meet in something like 19 living rooms in 2 weeks. You give me hope. I believe that together we can engage in unparalleled advocacy and action to secure peace in a safe and Jewish state of Israel. I believe that I have throughout my career that together we must also combat hatred and indifference when they show their face. That's true, always true, when hate is concealing something that might hurt us. But we must also fight the face of indifference and hatred when it's the face that's looking back at ourselves in the mirror, when Jews are complicit in systems that harm others. Am I nervous about raising that topic? Yeah. But I have confidence because you give me hope. We have a huge agenda, but steadying me are the wise and devoted teachers, laity, staff, faculties of our early childhood centers and religious schools. I get to be on their team. I want to be one of the people cheering for us all. And one day when I've completed my career, may it be a long time from now, I want to be led by this team and some of your children. I want to look back on this moment, and I don't know, there's probably about 400 people here tonight, but 1,200 will say they were. So take notice of who's really here. We're founding a new congregation. And although it's unusual to name that kind of dream of out that far into the future, when someone succeeds this inaugural team, none of this works. None of it works unless we can be honest with each other. We have an opportunity before us. This is our shot. Let's not throw away. Not throw it away. In July, we'll begin together to fashion a lighthouse, a Mishkan Or, a radically inclusive congregation, a place where the pulpit is free for each person to stand and speak the truth here as we see it. If that sounds ambitious to you, good. It should. We didn't plan to merge because we were forced to. We did it out of the bravery of wanting to explore another way. A circle of leaders discerned to sit and plan together in two places that I've spent more than a lifetime and half competing. Our longest-serving leaders admitted that the momentum, that competitive instinct between Tifereth Israel and Anshe Chesed, it worked, and then it stopped working. It worked for a time, but it's not a paradigm that can inform a vibrant and sustainable future. And that's not the first time the leadership of each of these temples has been willing to embark on change. It's actually in the DNA of our communities. I'm especially thinking of the lay leaders who drafted Rabbi Abba Hillel Silver in 1917 and supported his grand and very different vision of the way a community here could support the future state of Israel. His passionate commitment to Zionism ran counter to the culture of Reform Judaism at the time. The Temple-Tifereth leaders backing Rabbi Silver's play, investing in the upbuilding of Israel, that influenced worldwide Jewry. Less than 5 years later, Anshe Chesed hired its first Zionist rabbi, Barnett Brickner. Together, Brickner locally and Silver internationally symbolized Cleveland's lasting reputation. Cleveland is a place where Jews light new paths and where we face hard truths. And our temples since that era have changed the entire trajectory of congregational advocacy in the world. For more than a century, each of our communities has been committed to a more just world and to a more secure homeland for Jews and a fairer United States for people of all backgrounds, political affiliations, sexual orientations, gender identities. When we face today's rising anti-Jewish sentiment, we should have at our back our memories that Beechwood in the 1950s, get this, didn't want there to be synagogues built here. The generation of Anshe Chesed leaders at that time fought. They fought hard to be able to fulfill our vision of religious freedom, taking their desire to build a temple on Fairmount Boulevard all the way to the Ohio Supreme Court. I'm so grateful to serve a temple that paved such a path. I'm grateful for how our community responded to the call from Rabbi Lelyveld to name aloud and act upon the idea that Jews should stand up as allies in the fight against segregation and structural racism. And that's not all. That's not all that made history during that era. The leaders working with Rabbi Lelyveld envisioned something we've felt so deeply tonight. They envisioned how the power of music could draw a community together spiritually. The key ingredient in transforming the ordinary song or prayer into sublime communication with all that is eternal. Well, at Anshe Chesed, the key ingredient was 1980, when Rabbi Lelyveld met Sarah J. Sager and offered her the opportunity to bake from scratch, the first of two incredible eras in our cantorate. About umpteen years later, Temple-Tifereth wisely placed a similar, inspired, and new dream of its own of making music and building it with the biggest heart of Cantor Kathy Wolf-Sebo. And I'd be foolish if I didn't stop at this moment and ask all of us to just consider how courageous Cantor Laureate Sager and Cantor Sebo are. These two leaders have modeled what it means to start something new. They got us here. We are grateful to them for leading us with spiritual and humane wisdom. And since it became public that we were contemplating partnership, leaders across the nation have reached out to me asking, how does this happen? Well, I'll respond with words that are familiar to you, but Rabbi Klein, you won't find them in the Tanakh. Here they are. You ready? You're gonna recognize them, Scott Spiegel. In Northeast Ohio, nothing is given. Everything is earned. You work for what you have. Rabbi LeBron James published those words. He wasn't even talking about radical transformation. He was just saying, I'm coming home. I'm coming home. Last week, 95% of our members voting said, yes, I'm in. I'm ready for radical transformation, I think. When you voted in such overwhelming numbers, you did so with the knowledge that whether we like it or not, a new era has risen. Responding to a proposal for a new setting with new partners, new vision, new resources, your vote said to me, I'm coming home. Home to a place that sees me and accepts me for who I am. Home to a place intent on reaching every generation. Home because you got to take the long way home sometimes when the world is stormy and tumultuous. And how do you get home during tumultuous times? You look for the lighthouse. You let the light that it shines guide your path. That requires courage too. To find a source for your courage, you look back on your legacy. You don't stay gazing at the comforts, though, of where you've been. You look ahead. You look to the lighthouse, and that gets you through the gap from where you are to when you're home. 20th century Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel said, living as a Jew means feeling the soul in everything, in others, and in our own existence. Friends, that's what we need from you, to feel the soul and spirit of this moment. Heschel said that the Jewish soul was a candle wick waiting to be lit, that like candle wicks, Jews wait for a flame that holds the slightest bit of pure intention. Each of us flickers a longing for Shabbatness, for beauty, and for serenity. When I think about how Rabbi Heschel and his Torah were saved by a Reformed Jewish movement intent on doing something to keep Hitler from killing Judaism, along with killing 6 million Jews, I take his message about candle wicks very personally. I remember it as a reflection back to the book of Numbers, when Moses shared leadership with his generation, with his team. He asked, as I will, my teammates to guide and coach this community when it's weary in the wilderness. You remember how Moses commissioned his partners? He did so by investing in them, placing his torch next to theirs to light that flame. One could even say Moses himself became a Mishkan or Ma'at, a small dwelling place of light, enabling the Holy One's radiance to exude from his beaming complexion. He became the most shining example of how you conduct yourself as a Jew, a responsible person, willing to stand up on that responsibility, and willing to do so in quiet, humble, lonely moments when no one's looking, because you know right in front of you is a modest bush that could soon burst into flames. The Jewish culture does not convey to us that all those holy events occurred backwards in history. Essayist Annie Dillard, in her book For the Time Being, explains it's not too late for the holy for us. The absolute is available to everyone in every age. I believe her. I believe her because of a rabbi who changed my life in immeasurable ways. My Rabbi Daniel Schwartz was a protective second father to me. His coaching and mentorship and his getting in my face, whether it was to guide my personal values, or face hardships, or determine my response to a major health crisis, that altered my outlook forever. That's not even counting all the tricks that I stole from his very fulfilling rabbinate. Rabbi Schwartz once shared with me the following story. A story that demands of me to turn my life now toward noble ideals and humane service with you. Don't worry, it's the last story. But it takes place, you betcha, dude. I named that kid. The story takes place years ago on a dark night in a rural town. There was a man who felt he simply had to get where he wanted to go quickly. So rather than wait the extra time as the law required, the man in the car decided late at night to take a chance. And he went and crossed a set of train tracks speedily, even though a train could be approaching. Spoiler alert, it turned out to be a fatal decision. A train did hit his car, and the driver was killed. But I promise that's not how I'm ending my sermon. You see, the driver's widow sued the railroad company, and her case concluded with the testimony of a key witness, a night watchman whose job was to wave the lantern at the crossing, to warn drivers of trains that were coming. The watchman testified before the judge, saying that as the car approached from down the road, I took my lantern out of the booth. I went to the road and I waved my lantern back and forth. The train came up and I waved my lantern. I tried to warn the car, but it kept coming. It got closer and I waved more, but the man driving in the tracks, he didn't slow. I waved my lantern furiously back and forth, but the driver went onto the tracks. He said aloud in horror, I saw that man killed in that train. When the testimony was finished, a moment passed. The plaintiff's attorney rose, walked toward the witness, and said, I have one question. Was the lantern lit? The watchman began to shake. Tears poured down his cheek. Question went unanswered, because his silence said it all. The one person whose job was to guard the flame, he didn't know. He didn't remember if he had kindled it. Friends, it's 8 days before Purim, the second month of Adar in 5784, and I'm telling you that story this Shabbat because I'm afraid. I'm afraid that it has been too long since someone truly guarded the flames in our souls' lanterns. I know that we, for decades, have carried the lanterns. I'm sure we've held the container in which light might dwell safe. Study, prayer, reflection, activism, seeking to better the world. We've grabbed what generations before us have handed down, and I'm standing here tonight at Abba Hillel Silver's own pulpit. What an honor. In my own way, I'm waving a lantern with great vigor and spirit. But there's a train coming, and I need your help. Join me. Join me and be sure that 2,000 or more candles glow against the darkness of the night sky. Let's be sure the light in our house stays kindled. Let it signal of solidarity to our people in Israel and all over the world. We can protect the world from seeing again what we saw 5 months ago. The inside of a pogrom capable with much force as a train hitting us at full speed. Living up to our sense of purpose will do it. Saving and redeeming and living out Jewish values. That means right now, kindling light in the lanterns, making thousands of souls radiate like a beacon, because a beacon brings us home. We can come home. Lador vador nagid godlecha. We can protect the chain of Jewish tradition. From generation to generation, our lips will speak out, our views will be unpopular, but Lador vador, our lips, our hearts, our votes, our lives, everything we've got will praise God's name. And then this house and the entire household of Israel. And that'll be filled with light.